Welcome to episode 85 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us. This episode is a resort special. We're going to be looking at Crans-Montana, Courchevel, Les Menuires. We're going to be asking Al for advice on how to choose your hire skis, and we're going to hear a snippet of my interview with some more Olympians. There is a little bit of other news we'll cover, but we'll move on to that shortly. I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for sponsoring the podcast. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate Switzerland for having the best railways in the world. This is something I blogged about for Ski Flight Free. It was effectively decided by a new company called Midnight Trains, which is very exciting. They're going to be running night trains all over Europe, but they selected Switzerland for the best railway network. For those of you who are Wham or George Michael fans, when you do go out to the Alps next, I noticed that there is now a Wham walk. For those of you who don't know, the video for Last Christmas was filmed in Saas-Fee, and an activity you can do when you're out in Saas-Fee is go on a little guided tour of all of the locations for the shoot. Get that on the list for the next time you're in Switzerland. Right, my name's Iain Martin. I'd like to introduce my guest today. I'm delighted to be joined by freelance journalist Katie Dartford. Hi, Katie. How are you?
Morning. Yeah, all good.
Excellent. And host of the YouTube channel 150 Days of Winter, Alex Irwin. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Iain.
We also have our regulars, Katie Crowe from Battleface Travel Insurance. Hi, Katie.
Morning, Iain.
And our equipment expert, Al Morgan from skikitinfo.com. Hi, Al.
Hi, Iain.
Right, let's start by finding out when you skied or snowboarded last. I know that there are going to be some new answers, some more encouraging ones. Let's start with you, Katie.
Yeah, I got back from Crans-Montana on the Monday, skied on Monday, and then got back to the UK. So yeah, not even a week ago.
Wow, that's good. Well, we're going to be talking about Crans-Montana in more detail, so we'll go on to that. What about you, Alex? I know you're in Courchevel, so I'm imagining you skied fairly recently. When was it?
If I wasn't here, I would be outside at the moment. So yesterday was when I last skied.
Not bad. And spoiler, Alex and I actually skied together earlier this week, which was great fun.
It was just like old times.
Al, I know that you were due to go out to the French Alps later this week or next weekend for Christmas. I am obviously incredibly disappointed for you and for everyone else because yesterday France introduced a travel ban for people from the UK. So this is the elephant in the room. They've done it actually before we started recording our podcast. And more recently, we've been dealing with these things on the fly. Katie, let's have a look at the Battleface travel update. Do you want to explain to us what the situation is with that French ban?
Yeah, yesterday, France tightened its COVID restrictions for travellers arriving from the UK in response to rising case numbers. So from Saturday, all those wishing to travel from the UK to France, regardless of their vaccination status, need to meet criteria now defined by the French authorities that the travel is essential. So that's a massive hammer blow to those who have got ski holidays booked over the Christmas period. They're saying that British holidaymakers already in France can continue their holiday as planned and don't need to return to the UK early. So I think there's a bit of a mad rush today and tomorrow before the new restrictions come into place.
Yeah, we're recording this on Friday, the 17th of December, and those rules don't come in, I think, until 11 p.m. GMT tonight. And that means that a lot of people are trying to go out, and I've seen that prices for flights and for the Eurostar have gone up massively. I imagine it's the same situation on Eurotunnel. Al, did you tell me in the green room earlier that you have some friends who are heading out and they brought their holiday forward?
Yeah, so they were supposed to travel out on Saturday, and then they managed to get everything moved to fly last night, so Thursday night, and just had a mad scramble to get all their testing done before they went, yeah. Best
of luck to anyone who's managed to get out there. Otherwise, absolutely terrible news for the industry as a whole. We know that 40% of British skiers go to France, so it's a huge chunk of the industry. There's no date in mind for when it might finish. All we can do, I think, is try and keep our fingers crossed and try and be optimistic of the idea that, you know, Omicron is everywhere. It's not just in the UK, and caseloads are going up everywhere. And perhaps a better approach would be to have more rigorous testing. I mean, they brought forward, you mentioned, Katie, the window for testing going into France, if you do fall under the conditions to be able to go there, was 48 hours, and they brought it down to 24 hours. But I think people would rather pay more for a PCR test and still be able to travel. It seems a bit ridiculous that you could be someone who's triple vaccinated, with a booster and have a negative test and still not be able to go into France. That seems disproportionate to me, but that is a situation as it stands. There is some positive news though for skiers. Katie, what's the situation in Austria just now?
Yeah, it's great because Austrian ski areas have now reopened all restaurants and hotels, which happened last weekend after the 20-day lockdown. So they've successfully cut the number of infections dramatically, and this is great news for Austria.
Sorry, I just want to clarify, pointed out to me by Andy Rose, there wasn't actually a travel ban into Austria. It's just that when you went there, you wouldn't be able to, go out skiing. But they're out of lockdown now. Ski resorts are open. It is open. There's also an issue with double vaccination and being able to get health passes in Europe for the 12 to 15-year-olds. I think there's also some positive news in that respect, Katie.
That's right, yeah. The government has announced that fully vaccinated 12 to 15-year-olds are now able to access the NHS COVID pass for international travel. However, children remain exempt from certification in domestic settings and at the UK border. So this is really good news that these teenagers are now going to be able to get their COVID pass, which is pretty essential for travel these days. The government has also confirmed that children between ages 12 and 15 are able to book their second COVID vaccination from this Monday.
Yeah, so I think, Katie, you have children aged between 12 and 15, don't you? We're in the same boat in that respect. And our children have had their first vaccination. I was busy counting down the 12 weeks until when they can get their next one. And it's going to come in too late for us to be able to, for Italy in half term. But by the end of the year and Easter, they should be double vaccinated. They should be able to get a Pass Sanitaire. And this whole issue that's been discussed as to do children have to get daily tests to be able to go on the ski lifts will be, hopefully irrelevant by then. On that point, I've just been out in France this week, and, the Pass Sanitaire, the health pass in France, is required to go on lifts. Now, I skied, a reasonable amount. I was checked twice during the course of my trip. You don't have to have a Pass Sanitaire to buy a lift pass. So you certainly didn't in Les Menuires. They said to me that, they don't have the right to check people's health pass, but they do on the lifts. I did see one family, and I thought their kids look like they're probably between 12 and 15. I'll ask them. And I said to them, they're a British family, are you doing like testing every day? And they said to me, well, no, we're just getting on with it and going skiing. Now, if your kids aren't in ski school where your health pass gets checked every day, then notionally it is possible. Technically, if you got caught, your lift pass would be confiscated. But that's what they had decided to do. And given they had 5 kids, I'm not quite sure how many were between 12 and 15. Evidently, it would be expensive, but hopefully that will all be negated. And as it stands at the moment, you can't ski in France anyway. So what do you think, Katie? Do you have an opinion on how things are going to go from here? Do you think other countries will follow France? Or do you think that French ban will be short-lived?
Oh, it's very difficult to say. It's a moving, it's a moving feat, and I'd recommend that everybody does all their research and reads up. The Battleface Travel Hub is an excellent resource to have a look at travel restrictions and entry requirements. And I also recommend the Telegraph Ski Tracker, because it gives you updates on the latest rules in ski resorts and travel advice prior to travel. So I just recommend that everyone just does their research and make sure they get the necessary travel insurance in place prior to their trip.
You obviously work for Battleface Travel Insurance, but I'd recommend our listeners have a look at that. So as Katie says there, you need to do your due diligence, but as always, the rules are changing the whole time. So just give you the latest update. This is now as of the 20th of December. For entering to Switzerland, it's eased slightly. The PCR test on days 4 to 7 is no longer required for fully vaccinated visitors. And the PCR that was required before entry has now been widened to a PCR test 72 hours beforehand or an antigen test 24 hours beforehand. And another bonus there is children under 16 just need to have a negative test to be able to ski. There's another daily testing that you're getting in France. And it is so dynamic and changing the whole time. But certainly going into Austria now, as of 20th of December, if you haven't had your booster jab, then you need to have a PCR test as well. What is really interesting is that over in Austria, they have made it easier for children in that 12 to 15-year-old bracket to go skiing. They've introduced something called the Ninja Pass. And the Ninja Pass essentially negates the need for doing that testing every single day that you have in France. So I find this really interesting that both countries, Austria and Switzerland, seem to be looking to capitalise on this political judgment in France that has obviously stopped British skiers going there and making it a little bit easier for British families. But whichever country you're thinking about going to, you really must check the latest news in place at the time. Okay, well, there is skiing going on, and we're going to be talking about it shortly. We've got a couple of snow reports this week. Firstly, Andy Butterworth, our regular correspondent from St Anton, rejoicing in the end of lockdown, and also from a listener, Stephen Speirs, who is out in Outdoors. And good news is a couple of late additions. We've got Simon Burgess, who's out in Switzerland. I mentioned he's got the Magic Pass. He reports from Les Arts, and we also have another report from Austria.
Hi Ian, hi everyone. Andy over in St Anton with the next or latest update. It's the 15th, Wednesday the 15th of December. The resort's been open now officially. That's a big yeehaw. The resort's been open since Monday the 13th. And so we're 2 days open. The lifts are running. Pretty much on not far off full capacity, which is fantastic. The resort is surprisingly busy, way busier than I think any of us thought it would be, like for the very opening on the 13th. But it's a really good buzz around town, which is lovely to have back. After pretty much 17, 18 months of no business and no buzz, it's great to have that buzz back in town. There's quite a few Scandinavians around, there's quite a few guests around, there's lots of resort staff around, everyone coming in to enjoy the pre-season snow, which is also pretty spectacular still. We had days and days and days on end of fantastic snowfall, set a great base, and almost bottomless powder, almost with no base at the top of the mountain. So it was really good. So everyone who was here when the lifts were closed, there was heaps of touring going on and people getting in some fantastic face shots and powder runs. In the last couple of days, it's warmed up a little bit. That's no bad thing necessarily at the start of the season, because it means it packs the snow down, it firms that base up. And the long-term forecast is certainly going to be a very white Christmas. Not much snow forecast in the next couple of days. Not to worry, because there is meters and meters of the white stuff at the top. But going into after the weekend, early next week, there should be more snowfalls on the way, which will be ace. Lots of people asking about après-ski, and it's après-ski happening. Obviously, places like St Anton are pretty famous the world over for après-ski. Après-ski is allowed, just slightly different. So the Crazy Kangaroo, the Musavert, the Hoistadel, the Road Alarm, all the places up on the mountain will be open, but they're going to be more restaurants than they are bars. So they can open. You have to book a table. It's waitress or waiter service only. There's no standing at the bar. There's no drinking at the bar. There's no dancing. Music has to be kept below a certain volume, a certain level, so as not to encourage parties. And those are the regulations for après-ski as far as we know it. Everyone is sort of hoping / expecting that by early, middle of January, once the new year is kind of out of the way, that the restrictions might be eased a little bit. And I know that everyone who runs an après-ski bar is desperate for the business to return to normal, and pretty much every skier will be desperate to dance on the tables, have a good time, and really cut loose. It's the least we deserve. So all in all, great news from St Anton, great news from Austria. The resort is open, everyone's smiling, everyone's happy. COVID seems pretty much under control, good regulations, safe regulations in place, and après-ski is starting, just maybe a little bit different to how it used to be. Very much looking forward to seeing anyone and everyone out on the slopes. Cheers.
Hello, this is Stephen Speirs reporting on the snow conditions in Alpe d'Huez in France. I'm not a participant in the ski industry, just an average skier, although I am the club secretary in the very historic Glencoe Ski Club. This week has been an excellent starter week for Alpe d'Huez in terms of snow conditions. I arrived on Sunday, there was great snow cover, skied on Monday and Tuesday in bluebird conditions, and it was really just gradations of what I'd call excellent snow, 5 out of 5 or 4.9 out of 5 at the top of La Serene, where it was maybe a little bit thinner snow up there. Main runs are open here, tend to be those closer to the resort, Lasaren has been open a couple of times. It has been windy or blown a hoolie, as we say in Scotland, on a couple of occasions. Tuesday afternoon, a bit overcast. Wednesday, dumping snow all day. The forecast was 40 centimetres of snow. I reckon there's 50 centimetres to potentially as much as 1 metre I've seen reported elsewhere. But it was a lot of fun, and Thursday was just off the charts once the visibility improved about 11 o'clock in the morning. The quality of the snow skiing down La Signal, the signal piste, which had been pisted overnight, but with about 20 centimetres of fresh snow on it, was just great. The snow flaring up around your knees and so on. Excellent day of skiing. So that's it from me from Alpe d'Huez.
Hi Ian, Simon here reporting from the first stop on my Magic Pass road trip, Les Menuires. Les Menuires has been baked in sunshine today, offering up some early season spring-like conditions. The resort is working hard to open the terrain park, with one line of jumps and rails already in place alongside the border cross track. The construction of a huge half pipe and the large jump line also look well underway. All in all, a beautiful day here in Les Menuires and perfect for taking the panoramic views, coupled with a gorgeous inversion from the revolving restaurant at the top of the gondola. If people want to follow my road trip, they can head over to simonjackburgess.com or my YouTube channel with the same name.
Hi Ian, it's Elena from the Tyrol Tourist Board. So I'm really happy to give you a current update from Tyrol. So in general, the situation here in Tyrol is quite stable. The 7-day incidence has decreased during the lockdown. So the gastronomy, the hotellerie shops and other leisure facilities as well have reopened for recovered and vaccinated people here in Tyrol. Our local businesses are well prepared. Safety is our top priority. So yes, that is why we have still safety regulations in place. So a health pass is a requirement to use the ski lifts, and the people also need to wear an FFP2 mask. So they are also needed at the lifts and in crews, but not out on slopes while skiing. The snow conditions here in Austria, yes, especially in Tyrol, are excellent for this time of the year. Also, after a series of heavy falls in the recent weeks, we had a lot of snow here in Tyrol, so that's why the snow conditions on the slopes in every ski area is perfect. I also was at the Rosshütte in Seefeld ski area, and the snow conditions were excellent. My colleague from the Tyrol Tourist Board also was at Obergurgl over the weekend, and it was wonderful. So yes, we are really happy that we are having good snow conditions, a lot of safety regulations in place. Yeah, so we are really looking forward that this situation will remain for the next few weeks, and really looking forward to welcome our guests.
So, Katie Dartford, you mentioned you were out in Crans-Montana, and we didn't talk about your skiing just then, but I've got a feeling that you're out there for some pretty incredible conditions. Is that right?
Yeah, I knew all over France and in Switzerland that it'd been snowing a lot. I wasn't quite sure how much because I hadn't seen it, but yes, it was one of the best starts to the season for a very, very long time on Saturday. So yeah, whilst it wasn't blue skies on the Saturday, there's a lot of snow, and then the sun came out on Sunday. But obviously there wasn't so many people, so you could really enjoy it. And yeah, it was like, on piste, off piste, it didn't really matter. It was the same. They didn't bother pisting it.
I saw some great photos, I think, taken by a mutual friend of ours, Rob, View, and it looked like pretty deep powder there. Looked nice.
Yeah, I'd say I was up to my thighs. I'm not very tall, but it was still up to my thighs.
And what was there an issue with skis? I read a piece you wrote for Euronews.
Well, maybe it's just me, but I can't ever seem to hire powder skis. Is that a thing? I don't know. No matter how much you insist, like I want this width, they won't do it. And so I was skiing off piste and sort of like piste skis, which I managed, but
it can be a bit deceiving, that early season snow, certainly in the Three Valleys. Sadly, I missed that Sunday, which looked like the day for skiing. But in the Three Valleys, there was coverage off piste. It was all cut up by the time I was there. But some of it, wasn't particularly deep, and you can easily hit your skis on a hidden rock or something. What about the COVID protocols in Crans-Montana? What was the situation there, Katie?
They checked us when we went into like a mountain restaurant and things like that. I wouldn't say it was as strict as France at all. We kind of tentatively wore our masks indoors, but it was kind of like inconsistent, I would say. New us, maybe people aren't sure of the rules. I don't know. I mean, I think they're making more decisions today about that. So, but you certainly will need to show your Pass Sanitaire or whatever it is that you have, generally speaking.
Yeah, and as far as lifts are concerned, it's obviously masks to be worn on all enclosed lifts, gondolas, etc., but not on chairlifts.
Yeah. So wasn't all the time we had our mask pulled up 100%. Once or twice we were told off, other times not.
Well, I can tell you that in France, there were lots of signs everywhere in Les Menuires and across the Three Valleys to wear your mask, and people were wearing their mask in the queues. And I actually saw one person kind of told off for not wearing the right kind of mask. But one thing I would recommend to listeners, if you're going out this winter, is I wore one of the kind of integral buff masks that actually the Les Menuires gave me, and they're really good because you can just lift it up from your neck over your nose whenever you need to, and you don't have to worry about things tucked behind your ears. And quite a lot of resorts have these available and have them on sale, so I definitely recommend that. Also, when you're in Crowe, Katie, you went along, I think, to one of my favorite places, the Alpe Chalet.
Yes. You know it, do you? That doesn't surprise me. Oh yeah. Oh my God. I was just like big kid. I was like, if only I had one of these on my doorstep.
And did you try anything out then? Because this is a place where they've got a kind of skateboarding and BMXing and trampolines. Big
ramps, airbags, trampolines. So I, tempted as I was to get on a skateboard, I've had bad experiences of that. So I thought, not right now. And now I tried the trampoline, but it wasn't just on bouncing as normal. Like we put on like this foam thing that would be a bit like a snowboard, I suppose, but foam. And we bounced on that, and then also some like small skis as well that were actually quite hard. So you could practice like certain tricks if you wanted to, and then you could just jump off into a massive airbag. So you could practice all that as well.
Cool. Did you have a go at that, jumping into the
airbag? Yeah, I did.
Right.
It was so much fun. I remember my school trampolining skills came back to me, and I could do a few pikes and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. Don't think pikes count in the world of freestyle. Any sevens or misty flips or anything else like that?
Pike was about the extent of my what I was going to
try. Great fun. Yeah. I'm really keen to take my kids there. I'm trying to work out if we can tack it onto the end of our trip in Easter and maybe go along to the Alpe Chalet and then the Alpe Bay, which is a surfing place that Jim reported on a little while ago. I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I think that would be tremendous fun. Not too far away. The Alpe Bay, the surfing place, is over in Sion, but the Alpe Bay, the Alpe Chalet, the skateboarding and the trampolining is in Crans-Montana, and it's a good option for a bad weather day, I think. Did you see anything else that looked like would be good for kids or just to occupy people while you're in Crowe?
Yeah, at the moment, although it might have just wound up, is have a festival called the Belle Louis. It's about a sort of mountain fairy, so very, very much for kids. And they had a lantern trail. I think it was the golf course in Cran. And there's like a treasure hunt and a light display and then a big wheel. And they also, more for adults, had like some really good chefs from Crans-Montana doing like small portions of dishes where you could, and then you'd taste that with a wine that they selected to go with it. Obviously local Swiss wine, which I love. All outdoors, but they had nice little outdoor fires and things.
Cool. And had you skied in Crans-Montana before?
A couple of years ago, I did city ski. In that respect, I wouldn't really know the resort so well.
So what did you think of skiing overall? Because were you out there on your own exploring, or did you have a guide with you?
Yeah, we were kind of on our own for a day or two, and then we had a guide to take us off piste. Not all the lifts were open. I'd say about a third was open, but even that, there was plenty of off-piste, plenty of piste, because there weren't so many people. So many beautiful tree runs, such a great view. I would really, definitely go back.
Cool. Excellent. Well, thanks very much for that, Katie. I was there this time last year, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. But this time this year, my first skiing for a year, I was in Les Menuires earlier this week from, I arrived on Sunday evening, travelled out by train and left yesterday, got back yesterday evening, and missed that beautiful powder day on Sunday, but skiing was exceptionally good. On piste, the snow is the best they've had at the early part of the season for probably 10 years or so. I guess the highlights, I checked out the new Lamasse lift. It's I think it's the fastest lift in France. Certainly takes only 8 minutes now to get to the top of Lamasse, where it used to take 25 minutes before. There's a fantastic restaurant, De Mille Huit at the top with incredible views. I've mentioned already the COVID kind of protocols in place, some random tests to check your Pass Sanitaire. But, given that the situation was that you had to be double vaccinated to go into France anyway on holiday, that would only affect those who had children of a certain age. And now, sadly, that's all put aside. I mean, Les Menuires actually announced that they were going to set up their own bespoke testing clinic, a new testing clinic in the Rebety area of Les Menuires, specifically really for British people to be able to go and get their children tested on a daily basis and be able to get the Pass Sanitaire. It remains to be seen exactly what will happen with that. However, the highlight of my time there was I did some ski touring, and I was really, really lucky to be able to go ski touring at night with a guide called Clément from the ESF in Les Menuires, and he took me up to the refuge Lac de Lou. So let's have a little listen to that. Don't often go out skiing at this time of night, but it's about 5:30. I'm with Clément, who's going to guide me up to the Lac de Lou refuge. And I can see piste bashers out there flattening down the piste for tomorrow. There's obviously no one else out, but we're going to be doing about, 300 or 400 metres vertical ascent and make our way up to the refuge where I'm staying the night as well. So, okay, Clément, on y va.
Let's go.
Right, that's about half an hour, 35 minutes of climbing so far. There is a nice easy trail over there, but Clément, why would we want to do that? We wouldn't want to do that when we could cut through fresh powder. So this is much better. Very beautiful. Not seeing any animals yet, seen some rabbit tracks, but I've got my eyes peeled. Les Menuires behind us, VT up there, and I don't know, an hour more to go. Half later and we're here at the refuge de Lac de Lou. And I think it was about 400 metres of vertical. Clément's guided me superbly, walking through virgin powder on the way up. Some of it's pretty steep. Clément is very, very fit. Doing my best to kind of keep up with him. But we're here, and it's just so peaceful, and we didn't even have our head torches on because the light of the moon, which you probably can't see up there, is about 2/3 full. It's just so bright that we could see from that. Just amazing, really. Just a wonderful way to spend an hour and a half of an evening. And I'll just say, the refuge, I stayed there the night. Clément went back down. It's very, very comfortable refuge. I've stayed in a few refuges before, which are, pretty rough and ready. And this is, more like a hotel or a pension, recently built about 4 years ago. And I was the only person staying there. So I had very good ratio of staff to guests, 2 to 1. And after I had my breakfast there and then actually ski toured up to Lamasse the following day, which was really great. I left quite early and watched the sunrise. Really lucky to have that experience. One day while I was there, we skied over to Courchevel, and I was lucky enough to ski a few runs with Alex while we were over there, which was a real bonus because I hadn't seen Alex in person for a couple of years. It's great to have you back on the show again, Alex.
Thank you, Iain.
I'm hoping that you're going to be able to give us a bit of an update on Courchevel. Let's start off with the other elephant in the room, the cable car, the Saulire cable car. Can you explain to us what has happened with that and what the status is?
Well, at the end of the winter and at the end of the summer, Courchevel or S3V, who look after all the lifts, carry out a stress test on the major bubbles and cable cars. And unfortunately, while stress testing the Saulire, they broke it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a photo. I think what they do is they run it at faster than average speed.
They run it at 100%, and I think they fill it with sandbags to do the weight. And
Right.
I think that they wait for the emergency brake to cut in, and I don't think the emergency brake cut in.
And basically, it hit the end and got stuck, kind of at 45 degrees or something, right?
The one at the top was at 45 degrees. The one at the bottom just went into the concrete. That is a big bill. Mr. Pomo is rubbing his hands because that was that was installed just before the Winter Olympics in '92. Out of the Olympics, so maybe the year before it was installed. But I think because they've damaged like the concrete on the lower one, it's not just a matter of putting in a new bubble. They actually removed the bubbles at the end of October. They got a crane in there.
Cable cars themselves.
They lifted the cable cars off, which trying to get a large crane up to the top of Saulire is quite a feat in itself, but they managed to. And,
so that's not going to operate at all this winter?
Not at all, no.
So does that put, from my recollection of the different lifts you catch, if you wanted to try and get up to, let's say, Saulire and connect over to Maribor, you've got to take Verdon and then Vizelle, or maybe there's some other ways to take
Vizelle, Suisse, Marmots, things like that. But
to go from 1850, then, do you think it's going to put a lot more pressure on the Verdon lift?
No, the Verdon lift is very busy because there's like a green run underneath the Verdon lift. It gets a lot of traffic anyway. The one thing that there will be a problem with is the couloirs that are underneath the Saulire are only accessible now if you go down to the Folie Douce and take the Maribor lift back up. Otherwise, you have to like hike all the way up the piece to get to them.
But that's not such a long hike, is it? Surely, if you're good enough to ski down the couloirs, you should be able to kind of hike up from Vizelle to the top of Saulire.
I don't think you've seen some of the people who ski the couloirs, whether they are good or not. They find out halfway down that all of a sudden they're out of their depth. This isn't fun anymore. I did a video actually on it. Graham Bell showed how to do it perfectly, and there were some other people who were not quite doing it so well.
Didn't we have? Didn't I see a viral video of Condi Tovex doing it last year at 100 miles an hour or whatever speed he was going?
That's the problem, that people watch Candide's videos and they go, "Oh, that looks easy. He makes it look so easy. Oh, I'm just going to backflip off this rock and and like this." And you realize that actually the slope is like that, and he's bonkers basically.
Yeah, I mean, I watched that video, and like when he comes down onto the piece, the Cône de Saulire, I was trying to assess whether those people were like real skiers or who were suddenly surprised by this guy going really, really fast, or whether they were stooges who were paid to pretend to look surprised when he came past. Now, you've got a big World Cup race coming up shortly in Courchevel. When is that going on?
On the 20th and the 21st. We've got the women's giant slalom, which is the highlight of Courchevel's season. They have been frantically icing the course, and also the Ineos clubhouse at the bottom of the slope has just been open. And again, they're getting that ready to host the VIPs.
We saw that when we were in Courchevel. I mean, it is amazingly impressive. You know, Ineos, company owned by, I think, Britain's richest man, Jim Ratcliffe. He basically funded that clubhouse. I wrote an article about it a couple of years ago. It's something like 20 million euros that he donated to the Club de Sport. His daughter races there. You know, he already owns a chalet and hotel in Courchevel. It's, you know, loose change to him, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think he found it down the back of the sofa. The 20 million also included a reprofiling of the slope as well, and they moved the finish line about 50 meters further down the slope as well.
Okay, and also they've got loads of floodlights that they've put in, because one of the women's races is at night. That's going on next week.
Yeah, it's all floodlit. When they're testing them at night, it illuminates the entire side of the mountain, and it's quite something to look at.
Okay, and you mentioned this is a World Cup, the World Championships you mentioned coming up as well. I saw some signs for the Eclipse, which will be the men's downhill run. Looks like they're encouraging people to try it out for themselves. Do you think that is a wise idea?
I think so. It's rather like the Fass over at Val d'Isère. This is going to be a slope where you can, in theory, ski where the professionals ski down. Maybe not with the same speed or the same grace, but it's an amazing slope. I half skied it last year on touring skis. I don't think I did it justice, but it's got some amazing undulations and aspect changes, which if you did go full on, makes it very challenging.
Yeah, my understanding is it's going to be really visual. There are going to be a few points on the course where the skiers are going to fly through the air for up to 50 meters or something like that. The World Cup finals are going to be in Mirabel and Courchevel in March, and they're going to hold both the men and women's downhill on that Eclipse course. So we'll be able to see it in action then. Prior to the World Championships. I've got one other question about changes in Courchevel. Some people think Latania is a separate resort. The three valleys tend to categorise Latania as being part of Courchevel. They've got a new beginners area down there. I noticed it when I skied past. Had a little look. Have you seen that at all, Alex?
I've only seen some of the snow reports from Latania about it. So, but it looks amazing. The amount of work that they've done down there for the beginners slope.
Yeah, and well, in fact, we'll come back to that Latania beginners area a bit later on. Well, that's brilliant, Alex. Thanks very much for that. Let's move on to our regular chat with Al from Ski Kit Info. We're now going to call this the Intersport Equipment Update. We're going to talk a little bit about ski hire today. I think the fact is that most skiers don't own their own skis, much to Al's frustration. He'd like everyone to buy skis. But I hired from Intersport in Les Menuires. It worked really well for me. I had all mountain skis, piste skis for the first couple of days, and I changed to touring skis, and they just swapped them around. I actually used my own boots on the all mountain skis, and then they gave me ski touring boots. So it was very flexible. I'm learning from you, Al, about skis, but I still don't know so much about them. I thought it might be helpful if you could perhaps give us, the listeners, some tips on how you should select your skis or boots from a hire shop. What should you be watching out for? What should you be looking out for?
I'm just really pleased that you're learning something from me. At least I've got a purpose here. That's fantastic. So I think you're a really interesting example and pretty indicative of a lot of skiers. You own your own boots. You appreciate the benefit of having your own boots and how that can enhance your skiing. And yes, I would argue, what if you own your own skis, you can learn how to use that and you're not learning a new ski every time. But for most people, or a significant proportion from the UK, certainly, ski hire works well. They don't have to worry about carrying loads of kit when they go with their kids. And it means they've got the ability to change when they're there. So as you rightly ask, what kind of kit do you select? The first thing, be super honest with yourself about your skiing. It's really easy to go, right, okay, well, I'm going to get the highest standard because I'm going to get the newest ski. But actually look at it, if that's a red or black run ski, because they're often graded on the color of the run, do you really ski that way? Because if you get a ski that's too stiff and too performance oriented, it's actually going to hinder your development. The other beautiful thing about hire is you can select something on your ability, and if that ability changes through the week or the conditions change, you can then change to a different ski. So select the kind of ski that's going to best suit your skiing. And most people will go for an all mountain ski. And actually many, many people will benefit if we can go for a piste ski. Because they spend most of their time on firm snow. And, Kate was saying how she skied powder on a piste ski, and absolutely you can still do that, not a problem. But on those deep powder days, then if they have them in the shop, you can swap up to something a bit wider.
Intersport let you swap around quite a lot. I wonder if you're going to say anything about this. When you hire skis from a hire shop, one of the things they always ask you is your weight and your height, because they want to set the Dns settings. I would encourage people never to lie about your weight and maybe even your height for that matter, because it does make a difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, so to calculate the Dns setting, you need your age, mainly are you over 50 or not, your height and your weight, and then they measure this boot sole length. So if you have your own boots, they'll measure that, or they'll know it for their own. It tells you on the side of a boot anyway. And that affects how the binding is going to release safely. Hire shops have got much better at setting this, but often they may not have scales in the shop or a way of measuring. So make sure that you go and you know those bits of information so that you can give them. Often they'll be asked for in centimeters and kilos, whereas we might work in feet and inches or stone and pounds, so it's worth knowing it in metric.
Yeah, and I gave him the data, and he just plugged it into the screen there, and it outputted, I think it was a Dns setting of 6. Now, for me, I would consider that to be relatively low, and I think it's because I was over 50. Because normally I would have my skis cranked up a little bit more than that, because I can go at a reasonable speed. I want to make sure they stay on my feet. Yeah. But I think you have to be very wary about kind of overruling the shop, let's say.
Yeah, it takes a lot of experience of your own settings to know how to set it and adapt it. It's not just the DIN. There's other springs in there that control. There's something called forward pressure, and the shop will set all of that. So if you start messing around with the binding, it may become a lot less safe. It might actually, even though you think it's becoming more tight, if you start moving things around, it might actually come off more easily. Let the experts do it.
Aside from kind of ski hire itself, I'm interested to know what you think. The all-mountain ski that I took, I was very lucky, I think. I had this season's Atomic Maverick, and I really, I mean, I loved skiing, but I really enjoyed that ski. I didn't swap around and try lots of them. I wondered what you thought about that.
Can I ask, do you know which one it was?
No.
What color was it?
It was black.
Right. Okay. So it was probably the 100 Ti, which is relatively fast. That's a new range. I've skied a lot of the Mavericks and the ladies, the Mavens, and they're really different to their old Vantages. I've been super impressed with them. Yeah, that's really interesting. You skied it and you loved it. That's fantastic.
On the second day, I was with a guide, Teo, and we got to ski over to Courchevel, where we met up with Alex. And, the pistes were empty. I mean, coming down Coombe de Saulire, there was hardly anyone. There were certain pistes that we came down there where there was no one else. And we really just kind of, opened up, and, it was great for going fast on kind of, biggish turns, and felt very stable underfoot.
In that, there's two that do 100 width and an 88 width, which has metal in it, which are both quite dark graphics. You might have been on the 88, and again, still floats really well. Superb on firm snow, really surprisingly good on firm snow as well.
Yeah, I took it onto the kind of off-piste a little bit. As I said, it was all cut up. It was still pretty cold, the snow then, so it wasn't so bad, and I enjoyed it. But there you go, I'm learning. Next time, when I take a ski, I'll make sure I know whether it's the 100 Ti or the 80 Ti or whatever it is. Katie,
the main thing is that it's fun.
It was definitely fun. Katie, can I ask you a question then? You said you hired when you're in Crowe, Montana. Do you normally hire? Do you have your own skis as well?
I normally take my own. A lot of the time I'm touring, so I've got quite specific equipment. But yeah, I normally take my own unless I know it's actually going to be piste skiing, because I don't actually have any really good piste skis. That was a different... I did have really good piste skis when I was in Crowe.
Right. You're telling us that your quiver is packed full of fat powder skis and all-mountain skis and twin tips and touring skis as well.
Something like that, yeah.
Excellent. And Alex, you obviously live in a resort. You don't have to cart them around with you. How many pairs of skis have you got in your quiver then?
Currently, in my active quiver, I have a 10-year-old pair of K2 Seth Morrison skis, and also in a complete contrast to that, I have a pair of movement Icky skis that are my touring skis, and they are about 1/100th of the weight of the K2 skis.
Right. I think I remember that Seth Morrison one. Has it got very gnarly graphics on it?
It's got very gnarly graphics, and it's also got a certain ski podcast sticker on it now.
Excellent. Al, what do you think about that? That's a classic ski, I imagine.
Yeah, it's a classic. I remember my first time on a Seth Morrison, and it was amazing.
When I bought it, it was like the second widest ski that K2 did. And now it's like the thinnest ski that K2 does. I think that shows what over 10 years.
Excellent. Well, that's really helpful, Al. Thanks very much for that again. You're continuing to add to my knowledge of equipment. So I mentioned there that I hired from Intersport. Just pop along to intersportrent.com. And if you're worried about changes, they have a full cancellation policy in place.
Cancel your booking up to the last minute and get all your money back using the Refund Now button. With Intersport's new option, you're in control.
We'll just have a quick Beijing update on progress. Charlotte Banks, she came first in the snowboard cross in Montafon in Austria. That is her second win now, I think. So she is looking very strong for a podium position come Beijing, which is in about 2 months' time now. So moving on very quickly. Katie Ormerod, she's coming back after quite a long break from injury. She was 5th in the big air in Steamboat. She has a lot of podiums under her belt, and hopefully that progress will continue. And very exciting news from last weekend. Dave Ryding took 5th in the slalom at Val d'Isère. Now, I mentioned before that he'd done a couple of Europa Cup races, which is, below his level, which he'd won. But clearly, that kind of training has worked really well for him. And to come in with a 5th in a World Cup race is a really tremendous result, and very, very exciting for him in terms of prospects for the rest of the season and for the Olympics. And finally, Zoe Atkin, who I interviewed not so long ago. I'll put a link in the show notes. Interviewed her and her sister Izzy. She came 8th in the half pipe at Copper Mountain. So again, some good early form there. And now competition's going on the whole time. So we do our best to keep you updated. And I'm trying to get more interviews with some of the athletes before we go. But I have got an interview with 2 Olympians. Regular listeners and subscribers will already know this. Maybe you've even heard the interview because I released it as a podcast special last week. This was with Andrew Musgrave and Andrew Young, and they are cross-country skiers for Team GB. They've already been to 3 Olympics. This will be their 4th Olympics, and long-time listeners will know I've got a lot of admiration for these guys in terms of endurance training, combining everything. So I recommend you have a listen to the actual full podcast, but here's a little snippet. It's been pretty good because I watched like a trailer for a TV program that Norwegian TV are doing about the British underdogs, which is featuring you. Is that right? It's coming out soon, or?
Yeah, it's going to be about. It's basically NRK are going to. I've been following the team, the whole British team through the off season, and they're following us through all the World Cups. I'm going to make a documentary. I'm not entirely sure how many episodes it's going to be. From what I've heard, it's going to be between 4 and 6 episodes of 20 minutes. And yeah, should be coming out. The first episode should be before Christmas, from what I've heard. So
that's quite exciting. Yeah, because I mean, in Norway, we talk about Nordic sports anyway, and cross country skiing and Nordic skiing was in the Olympics a long time before alpine skiing. So I think it has a higher profile in Norway. When will you get over to Beijing, Youngie?
That's a good question. I'm not sure we know 100% on when we'd be able to go, because there's a lot of travel restrictions and stuff in China at the moment. And I think the last I heard was that there was some, that's one of the things that the team are working on is the travel. And the other unique thing is the cross-country events are right on the altitude limit for what cross-country skiing is allowed. So it's right at 1,800 meters. So we've obviously got to be at altitude before we go. So there's a lot of things that have to fit in for the travel to Beijing.
Okay, that's really interesting, because I was going to ask you about the venue. I've talked to different athletes, and in fact I shared a photo on Twitter earlier today of the Big Air, and that's obviously very urban setting. Other athletes are expecting artificial snow, which is going to make it a lot harder. So you're telling me that that's going to be around 1,800 meters. And there's 2 things there that make me think straight away. Firstly, you might actually have real snow rather than artificial snow to be competing on. And secondly, there's a rule that says that cross-country skiing has to be below a certain altitude. Is that right?
Yeah, so the highest altitude we can compete at is 1,800. The FIS have turned a blind eye in the past. For example, we raced in the Engadine Valley last year. Because they couldn't get another venue that was willing to host the World Cup. As a they tried to keep the competitions below 1,800 meters. Yeah.
Okay, and so therefore, Muzzy, you are going to try and adapt your training to get altitude in before you head out to Beijing.
Yeah, so we're used to competing at altitude though, so it's going to be a fairly standard pre-championships training block for us. But it's like Young, you said, the difficulty at the moment is we know exactly when we want to travel and we'd plan to travel out, but flights into China are restricted, so we might not be able to travel on the days we were originally planning. So that is the main issue for us at the moment. We're hoping that's all going to get sorted out. And we're
logistical challenges are the one side of it. What about the snow type, Muzzy? I take it it's going to be real snow. That's going to affect your decisions in relation to wax, which must be really important.
Well, where the cross-country venue is in the middle of a desert. So it's 1,800 meters and it's cold, but there's not going to be much natural snow. That will definitely affect the choice of skis and how the waxing is done. But luckily, me and Youngie have a waxer that's going to be sorting out our skis because we're absolutely useless at doing that ourselves. So if you ask us anything about waxing or skis, then we will have completely inconstructive answers.
Yeah, I read in another interview on the Snowsport GB website that you listen to lots of podcasts while you're doing your endurance training. Is the ski podcast on your list? And if it's not, are you going to be adding it?
Oh, it's definitely going to be on my list as of now. Apart from I will not be listening to this episode because I can't stand the sound of my own voice.
So hopefully you enjoyed that, and I highly recommend you listen to the podcast special, the whole episode there. I'd also just like to add this bit in. Andrew Young and the other member of the cross-country team, James Clugnet, brought home a best ever British result, which was 6th in the cross-country team event in Dresden. So congratulations, guys, and best of luck for the Olympics. Right, I think that's about the 5th, maybe 6th podcast in a row. We've had some Olympians on, so I'll try and keep that going in the lead up to Beijing. I've got a few reviews here. Really, so many since our last episode. Thank you very much. If you don't hear your name mentioned, it means I've had to hold you back until the next episode, 86. But Robski1 on Twitter said, my number one podcast of 2021. Thank you for keeping me company on Spotify all year long. And in fact, I think that's the kind of Spotify update that everybody gets at the end of the year. And our stats have gone up massively. I think we're up 74% in terms of listeners over the year. So thanks very much if you're listening to us on Spotify. Pierre Henri said, again, a great podcast. Dave Moore said he was talking about the Andrew Young and Musgrave interview. Good fun and rapport. Sam Woodhouse on Facebook said, I'm enjoying the podcast very much. Tom Hunter said, great content. He asked for more info about whether the bars on the slopes are operating normally. Well, they certainly were in France, even though nightclubs are closed. But the Folie Douce was open, and there was a queue of people showing their Pass Sanitaire to get in. Andy in the St Anton update mentioned that as well. And also like to thank Tom for buying me a coffee or a cup of tea. Gareth Harvey also bought me a coffee. Thank you very much, Gareth. He said, I've loved listening to the podcast for a number of years. Thank you for the podcast and bringing the Magic Pass to my attention. Although I'm based in the UK, I have lots of meetings in Geneva, and for some reason, these often turn into long weekends. So buying the Magic Pass has caused me to explore a lot of the smaller resorts I'd never have considered. You wouldn't visit them for a week's holiday, but for a long weekend or even just a Saturday, it's great. And that Magic Pass is something you can buy to access a whole bunch of different resorts in the Vallees in Switzerland. And at this point, I'll just mention Simon Burgess, who's been on the show before when he skied in the Lake District at Rays. I know he's going to be going out to Switzerland to use the Magic Pass for a lot of December and January. So I'm hoping to get a few reports back from him. One more from Facebook. Andy Dalton said, I love your podcast. I not long ago found it. I'm trying to get through them all, but not listening to them in order was probably a mistake. I always find a little gold nugget of information. Keep up the great work. And you're not alone, Andy, because in the last week, I had a quick look earlier, and 101 of our 129 podcasts were listened to in the last week. Now, I've got one more from Ruslan. He bought me 25 coffees. I'd be wired if I had all of them at the same time. That's very generous of you, Ruslan. Thank you very much. He says, my name's Ruslan. I'm born in Latvia, but living in the UK. I've been an avid listener of the Ski Podcast for about 2 years since I first discovered it. I love the updates from resorts, and it was awesome to get info on mountain biking in summer as well. He's asked me to do a shout out for Valeria Slovia. I probably pronounced that really badly. Apologies for that. But hi, Valeria. But he also asked which resorts have free lifts for learners. Now, I recommended Les Saisies and Latania. We mentioned that beginners area in Latania. They've got 2 magic carpets there. Les Saisies has got a magic carpet. Katie, I wondered if you had any recommendations for beginners in the kind of Savoie area for ski resorts.
There is actually a new beginners area about to open in Saint-Gervais. up the mountain, so you can get that up the mountain experience whilst being on a beginner's area. Obviously, I haven't tried it because I don't think it's open yet, because I think the lift's open on Saturday in Saint-Gervais. So maybe that would be a good one.
Al, got any thoughts for beginners? Any tips for good resorts for beginners in Savoie?
Yeah, I think Teen's quite an obvious one, isn't it? And it's great because irrespective of which base you're in at Teen, you can generally get on a free lift with a decent run for a beginner, which is fab.
Alex, you're probably biased towards Courchevel. Would you say the Belcott is the best place to learn to ski?
It's an amazingly wide and flat slope for beginners. So yes.
Thank you for that question, Ruslan. Thank you for the coffees. Other listeners, don't forget you can always buy me a coffee, which will be converted into a tea at buymeacoffee.com, the ski podcast. I also enjoy all feedback about the show. So please do email me to theskipodcast@gmail.com. But for now, I'd like to thank Switzerland Tourism for sponsoring the show and thank my guest today, Katie.
Thank you.
The other Katie's already left. Al's disappeared from the screen. I think he's had some ski boots delivered or something like that. And Alex in Courchevel.
Hi, bye.
And finally, I'd like to thank you, listener, for sharing your time with us. Have a great Christmas and New Year. We'll be back with episode 86 in early January. Hopefully, we'll be skiing in France again by then. And there might be a bonus episode before then. But until next time, goodbye.